We'll call to order this pre-agenda Board of Directors meeting for the Siloam Springs Board of Directors, October 11, 2023. Roll call.
Blair. Here. Miley. Wiles. Hunt. Rissler.
Here.
Allen.
Here.
Carroll.
Here.
Thank you, and with that, I will turn it over to our administrator, Alan.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. Alan Gilbert, City Administrator. I'd like to start pre-agenda meeting by starting with some budget updates. I know we had our budget meeting on Monday, so I'd like the director to come up and just give you some updates on some changes and some additions.
Pardon, Madam Mayor. Madam Mayor.
Yes,
Nancy. Pardon me. I just wanted to let people know, since it's just a pre-agenda meeting and not a regular board meeting, I'm waiting on a very important phone call that it was either come for a little bit and take the call or just not come at all. So I apologize when my phone rings. I am going to get up and leave. So sorry about that.
Thank you very much, Betsy. We appreciate that. Thanks. Christina?
So since the meeting on Monday, we have took care of a little bit of housekeeping. We've moved the integrated software to finance. We've gone back and filled in the positions that were added this year. And City Lake grant for $250,000 was removed, and then we added back in the golf course for $125,000. A couple of other changes included that staff added $20,000 to the chamber contract to make it $50,000, with the expectation that we will have additional services related to economic development for them. $40,000 in payroll was added to the electric department. The original budget that was submitted did not include the raises for promotions, like if they were moving from lineman 1 to lineman 2. And the public services director was just recently hired and wasn't a part of the original budget submission. So after doing some assessing, he's requesting an additional $33,000 in personnel cost to adjust staff wages up. And the impact of these changes was a net increase of $105,000 to the general fund from $555,089 to $660,090, and a net decrease to the utilities of almost $74,000 from $183,940 to $110,221. So I am available for any questions, comments, or concerns about the budget. I will take everything that you guys give me today and integrate it into the budget for tomorrow. I believe the plan is to put it on consent. So we'll go ahead and make whatever changes.
And again, this week, if you want to meet with myself and Christina together, we'll be happy to meet and answer any questions. Again, I apologize for the oversight in electric. It's just something we had missed. They have a lot of apprentices that will be going up in their step, and we just didn't think about that. So again, we made that correction. And the second, we have the money to fix some of the issues that we're having in the public services division. We just got to remember, with the raise coming, we didn't have the additional capital, so we had to add that $33,000. So we'd just rather be transparent, let you know that's what we need moving forward.
So any questions at this time concerning the changes? No? I think maybe we're going to need to move the podium again today, maybe to the your left.
My left?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Steve, could you maybe come up and move that over for her, or does it roll so that it moves easily? Yeah. Okay.
I believe it rolls, but
Yes.
I can't do that right now.
Madam Mayor, I was just going to ask Christina, everything you just gave us, can you email or will there be like a final email?
I can email those to you. Also,
Write everything down.
once we, that's okay. And once we, I'll send out the email today, but I will also, we've been waiting to upload the budget for the agenda. So once I make any changes that are requested today, then I will make sure that that gets posted as well. There is one other item, just for transparency. Another item on this agenda on the 17th for the 700,000 would be in lieu of the $700,000 in the budget for streets next year. So basically there was a timing difference. That's not in another 700,000, it's to replace that.
So it's a swap, it's not an additional, it's replacing
Yes,
what was in the budget.
correct.
Right. Christina, if I'm correct, even the 700 she's talking about, that's actually, we're gonna talk about that in agenda. That's the same money that would
That's
be
the
in the
same
budget.
money.
We would
Mhm.
just use it earlier if we can get that project started this year. So it's nothing extra.
All right.
Questions? But again, we're both available this week and next week. If you need to call us, please set up a meeting or just come by to see us, and happy to answer any questions or by email, and we'll be happy to do it.
Thank you, Christina.
Thank you. Moving on to the agenda, again, just again, we had some board members today. We have a couple out of town, and one called me about an hour ago and just came down with an illness, so just hoping they feel better. And again, I know Director Allen's been sick, so again, hopefully we all can stay healthy. But again, moving on to the agenda, the first is that call to order, roll call, then the consent agenda. What I'm going to do tonight, after the agenda, I plan on talking about our master plan for streets. So hopefully we can move through this pretty quickly. But if you have questions, please ask us, because again, I'd like all your questions to get answered. And again, if it lasts longer, we can always move the streets conversation to a later time. So the first one is Resolution 5923, Airport Hangar Significant Development Permit Waiver. Kevin or Chris, are you guys prepared just to kind of give them an update on why we're doing that, or Ben? Again, if you have questions, I just kind of want to explain where we're at in this process.
Thank you, Alan, and members of the board, Ben Rhodes. So yes, before you is for consideration at the board meeting will be a waiver request to just basically put a pause on approval of significant development permits at the airport until we get a code change before you at the end of the year. And that essentially will exempt airport hangars that are 5,000 to 10,000 in size, which currently those trigger the significant development project or process. Those will be exempted, so with a code change. And so we're right now, just because of the different ground leases that have already been approved, that have come before the board for approval, we're wanting to allow those leaseholders to proceed with their hangars and just get a building permit for those, which would be consistent with kind of what we've done in the past. It's just that this is a technicality that we need to get worked out. So that's basically what the point of the waiver is. So I'm happy to answer any questions.
Is there a specific incident that is causing the waiver?
Yeah, there are several that are on hold right now that we're waiting for this waiver before they can proceed with their hangars.
What reason are they on hold?
Well, because of the fact that they would need a significant development permit.
And we don't, currently our code doesn't allow what they're wanting.
It currently, if you read the code, literally, they would be required to go through the planning commission and to the city board for like any other significant project. So we're hoping to just do the waiver in light of the future code change. Obviously that this is only good for 120 days. So, yeah.
Other questions there? And again, Director Russell, that came just I guess there was supposed to be a code change about 2 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
That wasn't done.
Mm-hmm.
So we're playing catch up on that, and
Can we
Ben
get
is,
details on that?
yes.
Could you?
Well, I had a question, but I wanted to make sure you were done. Are you still? What did you just now ask? I'm sorry.
I was just wondering what that code change that was supposed to happen 2 years ago that didn't happen.
It was going to be lumped into a much larger code change, which is part of the Unified Development Ordinance that I've been talking about, we have many, many different code changes that we're trying to implement with that effort. And so this one was lumped in with that, but I think there,
What was the details of it?
it would be, let me pull up what I have presented to Jay. It would allow hangars that are, or what would we say, for public use buildings that would be between 5,000 and 10,000 in size to be exempted. And what we're doing exactly is amending the definition of a significant development. So when you do that, then we wouldn't be capturing items that we're not, needing to necessarily go through the full process.
What
So
would they be exempt from?
the significant development permit.
I guess I'm just not understanding the full picture. I don't feel like I am, so.
Yeah. Well, like right now, any structure that's built that's over 5,000 square feet, if it is an institutional or commercial use facility, those require a significant development permit. So what does that mean? That means you have to go through technical review for a month, then go to the planning commission for another month, and then goes to the board. So basically it's a 3-month process to get that permit, and then they come back with the building permit. So what this is doing is saying that for specific facilities that are under 10,000, so rather than 5,000, go up to 10,000, those can be done just with building permits. You don't have to go through that whole 3-month process.
And how
So
long does building permits take?
about 2 weeks. Yeah. So it would eliminate this additional requirement of the significant development permit. That makes sense. What the code changes is doing.
This is to waive the requirement for two hangars that are coming through. One is 8,200 square feet, 8,100 and 1,7,200 square feet. So previously, we were not requiring that hangars do significant development, and that was based on previous leadership decisions. But per code, it qualifies under industrial. Our industrial calls out airports specifically, and over 5,000 square feet requires significant development. And so based on the code for industrial and based on the requirement for significant development, it was discovered that these hangars were supposed to be going through significant development. And like Ben said previously, 2 years ago, whenever one came through, a code amendment was supposed to come through to address that issue. That got lost in the rough. Nobody ever got the code amendment through. And then we have these two hangars coming through. I noticed on the building permit that they should be significant development. And so that's where this whole thing came from. And so those leases were told, based on what previous leadership did, that they would not have to go through significant development. They signed their leases with that in mind. It's only two hangars. And so that's why we're bringing forward a waiver for those two only. And then a code amendment for all future hangars. And it's just because hangars typically don't require the same requirements that a significant development would, like landscaping, parking, stuff like that. Does that make sense?
Yes,
So it's
thank
more
you
like
for-
a small scale.
Clear. I appreciate you for making it very clear.
All right. Yeah, no
That's what I
problem.
want, transparency. So state statute, I know this is city ordinances, state statute's not affected in this in any way?
No. This is just purely based on our codes that are in place. We wanted to follow them, but also we didn't want to, the point of significant development is to notify the public of, large scale impacts that are coming through. This is on a large lot that is not going to be causing any additional impacts than what already exists to the airport. They don't require landscaping like a typical commercial development would or an industrial development would. It's not the same parking requirements. And so just some of those things aren't really applicable to these types of projects. And so that's why we're bringing forward the code amendment to address that, so we can make it legal for us to go about it that way. And also doing the waiver because we promised these leases that they wouldn't have to. And that was based on previous leadership. So we just want to hold to our promise
Right.
for these two and,
Be honest to them.
yeah, and proceed forward in the future the correct way.
Okay, thank you.
This is the best way to moving forward. We were trying to find a way, staff got together to make sure we're doing everything legal and, following up to do what we said we were gonna do.
And I appreciate that. That's what I want. Thank you.
Anything, Chris, Kevin, to be good? I just wanna make sure you get all the information, there's nothing out there, and you guys are clear.
So I just wanted to reiterate, you talked about state statute. One of the things was relative to drainage. There's regional detention in that area, so any type of, even in that component, it's not applicable to this type of project at that location. So really everything that we look at during a significant development review is not applicable in the same way at that location. So that's really what led to this type of a decision. So I just wanted to include that drainage portion of it. If it's regionally detained, then it's already been accounted for whenever we talk about our drainage criteria manual and different stuff like that. So
Sorry, I'm leaning. I'm leaning because I want the sun out of your eyes, not mine.
He's
But
too tall.
There we go. So you think by you leaning that Chris is
know,
gonna
I'm
get the
like-
message he needs to lean?
I kept leaning.
We won't tell anybody.
Yeah, we're at the Silver Dollar City Funhouse right now. That's what
Any other questions, board?
No, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Director Allen, do you have something?
yeah, Megan, you answered a lot there. One of my questions was the definition of significant development permit is usually because there's other businesses around it that are being affected, right? And therefore, because it's a hangar, it's not like we're out surrounded by commercial property, then, well, my question to both you and Ben, should this, once this thing is done that we're doing right now, because from what you just stated, you brought up former leadership 3 times. So you're saying that something was, I guess, verbally, because if it was written, then it probably would be something that would have cleared itself up. Yeah, you're not gonna get out of the sun. You just need to put on sunglasses.
Okay.
No, just push it out of the way. It's okay.
If I may.
Really, it's dependent upon the height of each person that's standing up there. No, my question was, so something was said to the people that were buying the land or leasing the land that we're going to eventually build,
Yes.
that everything's fine, but it didn't get taken care of
Yes.
in terms of the code change, right?
Yes, that's true. It was going to be taken care of with the Unified Development Code, which is supposed to be coming forward in 2024. However, these applicants do have a timeline.
Yeah.
They signed their leases. They were under the impression that they wouldn't have, and we kind of threw them a curveball and said, "Hey, that's actually not how it was supposed to be going down. You were supposed to be doing this the whole time."
We're cleaning up a mess.
Yes, exactly.
Then my question to both of you then is, once this mess is cleaned up, should the hangars still be under SDPs? Or
So the code amendment that we're bringing forward, like Ben mentioned, we are increasing the square footage requirement for SDPs on hangars to 10,000 square feet and plus. So for example, I have one gentleman who came in today. He is looking at signing a lease with the airport. He's wanting to build a 14,000 square foot hangar that will qualify for SDP because there's certain things that go into that, like parking needs to be required. We need to look at drainage and stuff like that as well.
we have now that are over 10,000, do you know? I mean, there's some that are small and some that are huge.
I'm not exactly sure. I know the ones that are pending are less than
Expert,
10,000.
he knows. James will tell us. I mean, there's some that are,
Yeah,
you know, very big.
Currently at the airport, we have, I think we actually only have 3 that are over 10,000 square feet.
That's what I thought.
We have one right at 10,000, and then we have the one that's right by the road, and then if you combine our bigger city-owned hangar that has 3 different hangars sort of attached all to it, then we have over 10,000 square feet for that one. But so
Yeah, in terms of the actual single building, we have 3 over and 1 at 10, one right at 10.
So, yeah, and then currently we have a ground lease for one at 12,000, a little over 12,000 square feet that they haven't started on yet.
Okay.
And then we do have another person that's came in that's asking for about a 14,000 square foot
But these
one.
2 that we're addressing that have already, they're under 10.
Yeah, they're under 10. They're at 81 and 72, and
Okay.
that was part of the reason why he came to our airport was because
That-
we didn't
that-
require that significant
That big
development.
blue one near the highway, is it being used? I mean,
Yes,
it's
it is used daily.
it got built and did not get used for a while, right?
No.
Yeah, that's
No.
what I thought. Is it over 10 or?
Yes.
Okay.
It's at like 17.
Okay, wow, okay. Well, I kind of figured, and Megan cleared it up, that SDPs are more for what's being, you know,
Yeah.
affected around them, and these all being on city property, it's kind of,
Yeah, that's where we were at with it at the airport, is that it's the airport, everything's gonna be a bigger building out there.
yeah.
So this allows us to be able to.
I just wanted to make sure after we're done fixing this, if staff believes we should be including them or not including them. Because as I just said, it's not being really affecting others around it. It kind of makes sense that it not be required to have SDB, so.
Yeah, so that's with planning and everything with that, but for the airport, we were sort of if it's gonna be a commercial thing, it's gonna bring out stuff, then yes, it definitely needs to go that direction.
Right.
And then if it's just a bigger hangar, but then at 10,000 square feet, you start bringing more fire code in, and it needs to
That
be
makes
looked
sense.
at a lot closer.
Yeah, yeah. Well, thank you for explaining all this, because a lot of this is just completely over our head unless we already know it, so thank you.
All right, thank you, staff. Any other questions? We'll move on to the B, which is adoption of the '24 budget. And then C, the adoption of the
I have something on
compensation
B.
plan. I'm sorry?
I have something on B.
Okay.
I would like to see that, especially, I haven't read sat down and read the resolutions that you sent, but I kind of skimmed over them. And one of the and I know we're talking about the budget. You'll get what I'm saying in a second. So I would like somewhere in there, hold on, I'm bringing up my email, and I'm blind. So it was questioned whether or not, I thought it was maybe it wasn't in the resolutions. I've been reading so much lately.
What topic are you on, Lisa? I'm sorry.
B, adopt 2024 budget. I would like a statement in there somehow that says, just because we approve this does not saying you can use those funds because of what we've went through. I want some kind of clarification that approving this budget does not mean we are saying go out and spend the money.
Christine, I think they're talking, Director Lisher, you're talking about the Main Street and the Chamber, those contracts where this money's in there.
Yeah, but, I mean, because of the Main Street, because it's not their fault. I'm just saying, it did show us that just because we're approving a budget doesn't mean we spend the budget. Do you see what I'm saying? It's still, the items that come to the board have to be approved through the board, or those money cannot be spent. And I want clarification in our budget for legal purposes, for future legal purposes. Even if you have an outside attorney, AML, I don't care, somebody write a statement that goes in the budget that says upon approval.
Thinking how to do that, because, again, some contracts come to you, some don't.
Right.
Christina, do you have I understand what you're saying. I'm just trying to figure out how I can, because some contracts my spending
Why would
limit.
some come to us and some not? I guess I don't understand. I'm confused on that one.
We have hundreds of contracts that are, Director, now, we've had conversations on this. We have just hundreds of contracts that come through, anywhere from $500 to $1,000 to $5,000. I mean,
Right.
fuel, different things like that. We would never
If
get
it's a
anything done.
contract that usually comes to the board, just because we're saying yes, does not, and I'm not talking about Main Street, I'm talking about any that come to the board, I think it needs to be clarified that just because we approve the budget does not mean we're not approving, that we're approving that money's spent. You might have a whole different board at that time, and that's not fair to that board for us to be deciding what they are going to spend.
Lisa, are you referencing more or less big project stuff? I mean, you're saying across the board, but you're not just saying just because
Thing that comes to the directors.
outside organization. You're saying if there's a $500,000 capital project or some project that's coming up that we've allocated in the budget. That's the key word, allocation, that we keep getting thrown. Budget is an outline, and allocate is when we actually approve the expenditure.
Right.
And we've been told that by budgeting, we are allocating. That's not.
That needs to be clarified
that's-
in the budget.
And I only say, as we were told, many cities do that, but we
Don't.
have not ever done that.
We don't, and our
we've
history
had
shows that we
a
don't.
precedence and policy of bringing things to the budget
But I want it
approval.
clarified in the budget.
Yeah, I get what you're saying.
Christina, is that something that when you approve the budget, you guys can tell us, hey, item B, section 24, we're approving this, but this doesn't,
Doesn't mean go out and spend the
it
money.
doesn't spend it
because
until it's
still has to be
the
approved.
contract's approved by the board.
So-
I think it's come up because we've had changes of personnel, we've had changes of board members, and when something's in the budget and we have a new department head who's never been to see how things have been done, they're a new employee altogether. They may say, it's in the budget, so it's done, not understanding fully that, no, that still has to be a proposal. It's not just something you just assign, you have a bid I mean, there are things that are gonna be explained to that new department head, but other things may, like, no, you have to present it to the board. And so I see where you're coming from.
Right, and I see, and again, that is that the state statute, Christina, for approval, the budget appropriation of money. So again, we will be mindful to do that, but I don't know if state statute will allow that because the appropriation statute.
So, do we have to vote on this at this meeting, or could we put it off and get some legal advice? Because I really wanna, I do not want any board of director in the future have to go through
Okay.
what we went through in the last year.
So, I think, and maybe I'm not getting to the same places you're trying to get to, but is the issue, because since I've been here, we had these contracts and they were never brought to the board, as long as they were within the purchasing authority of the city administrator. And so I'm not sure what happened or how it changed where they started coming to the board.
Yeah.
Um,
But if I'm gonna
But-
vote on it, I don't want a citizen coming to me, well, you approved the budget. Yeah, I approved the budget.
mhm.
That is a guide, because that's how it's always been. Even when I worked here, that's how it was. But I don't want a citizen coming to me and saying, well, you approved the budget, so you approved that spending money. And I'm not talking about Main Street. I'm talking about anything that comes to me after, if it fails.
Right. So I guess what I'm asking you is, do you want us to, going forward, say if it's within our spending authority, it's within our spending authority. If it's not within our spending authority, then we bring it to the board. And so any of those contracts that are not outside of the city administrator's spending authority, they sign them? And
I'd like to know why it changed, because I don't think
I don't
when
know why
first
it
got on,
changed.
we voted for them.
I've gone through
But
a
now we vote on
contract.
them, and
Mhm.
so, before I say, yeah, no, I mean, I'd
Oh,
like to know
no.
the facts and the history.
right, I'm not sure why they started coming to the board. They never used to come to the board.
They did many years ago.
Okay, well, maybe
They did many years ago.
Maybe
And-
maybe somebody requested that they come to the board. I don't know. I mean, I wasn't a part of that conversation.
Okay.
I'm just saying, when I first started here, if it was within the city administrator's spending authority, it was handled by the city administrator. And that was the reason why, instead of, that's why there's a line item for those contracts that are there every year, so that you guys see that we're spending the money, or where we're spending those monies.
But once you ask the board of directors to
Mhm.
vote on something, it
Mhm.
takes it out of your spending limit and
Mhm.
puts it in our authority.
Right. So I guess what I'm trying to say is, if we actually follow our spending policy, then I think that's the trick, is that nothing comes to you that's within our spending limits. Because everything else will be outside of the spending limit, and we will have to bring it to you.
So I want the budget to go through as quick as possible, but I want all legal issues fixed first. And I've lost sleep over some of this stuff.
So do you want us just to amend the policy to say you want to see every contract over X amount, whatever X amount is?
I don't know, I would like to know the history, why we get some, why we don't,
Well,
because,
when I got on the board in 21, I was told, I asked for, and I'm not talking about spending authority, I'm talking about bigger contracts, why we didn't have the contracts in the board packet. And Mr. Patterson said that Director Burns had said, our board doesn't need all these, it's a lot of excess paperwork, it's a lot of stuff that we don't need, so they quit providing them in the packet. And I asked that we be able to see the contract, because when the mayor signs a contract, she's signing on behalf of the board. Now, you may be able to, vote on it, but if you don't have the board packet including the contract, then a board member cannot easily, much less a citizen online, look at a contract for a big ticket item. And so Mr. Patterson did start putting those in, but apparently it had been excluded because, at least what Mr. Patterson said is that Director Burns just said the board didn't need all this stuff. But, you know, when the mayor's signing, she's signing on behalf of, as the board. That the board is guaranteeing we will pay this money because it's a contract. So she's the board representative. She's the leader of the city and so we have to be able to at least see it if there's questions like, hey, this paragraph doesn't work, you know. So that's when they started coming back, at least the bigger one. I don't know about spending.
When you say bigger ones, is it defined by a number, like, oh, anything over 30,000, 25,000?
No, I'm saying that we're beyond the spending authority.
What's the spending authority is?
50,000.
It's $54,000.
54,000,
Mm-hmm.
but
It
How much-
started changing per the
what do we give
CPI.
what do we give the museum board?
70.
Oh, never mind. What do we give? We give Main Street 35, and we give.
The chamber
We
is
get-
at 30 right now. Mm-hmm.
So those two are under the spending limit.
Correct, and I've looked at previous contracts, and they were signed by the city administrator. The only thing that usually came before you were things that were over my spending limit, or the mayor had to sign.
So, question,
It would make things go a lot faster if I could do it, because again, when contracts have to be signed, it depends where we're at. If we have an extra week, it could be 2 or 3 weeks, but there is a state statute. I asked Jay to step in just to explain the state statute on the appropriation of money. That's the board's pleasure.
But Lisa asked a question to Christina, and the answer was 54,000. I thought the state spending maximum was 30 to 35,000.
It used to be. Now it's significantly higher. However, as a city administrator form of government, the board sets the amount.
Oh, so we could lower or up that.
Yes,
But,
the last time that it was brought in ordinance, it had a CPI increase, I think. So that's how it.
For me to decide, hey, I think these contracts should go or these shouldn't. There's 3 board members. I don't think we should be making that decision, but I do think we should have that conversation because there are 3 board members missing. I think the conversation needs to be had. I don't know when that would be, and I know you want the budget through. And the 1st of November, would that be too late to do the budget for what we're needing?
That's at the board's pleasure. It would work for us. I mean, because the only thing holding it up right now is just deciding what contracts go through. I mean, just trying to figure out what contracts you want. If you want to lower the limit, that's your pleasure. But again,
I think that should be fairly a conversation with all the board members. To me, that should be a fair conversation.
do you see, again, I understand that conversation, but do you think that's a conversation to hold up the budget?
Yeah, because I don't want to vote on it and the rules change on me. I mean, it's like playing a game and the rules change. Who wants to play? I mean, no, the rules, I need to know clearly. I'm a follow the rule type person. You give me lines, I don't cross them. And I need to know where those lines are. It's very important to me because I don't ever want to be deceptive to the citizens. I don't ever want to look like I'm, and we got a lot of questions and a lot of beating up because we approved last year's budget and everything that went on. And I don't want to go through that again. I don't want my 6-year-old used again by people that want to attack me.
Christina, if I could, talking about the spending limit,
Mm-hmm.
did did Philip actually lower that? Or
No.
did the board lower that?
No, the spending limit was not lowered. The last, I think, year or two that Philip was here, he decided that he was not going to use the CPI increase, so that's why it stayed at 54,000. But based on our purchasing authority, the chamber and the Main Street contracts would have never come to you. So there must have been another reason why they were coming. I don't know what that was.
Okay, I just knew that there was something about that change in there that had something to do with him, so, yeah.
Okay.
And again, any money that's spent is always reported in my expenditure report. So you see anything over $30,000 automatically every meeting. So there's never anything that's just signed and you won't know about.
But knowing and disagreeing if the money should be spent or not are two totally different things.
I see your point, but again, the expenditure report shows you anything over $30,000. So you know, even things you approve, you're still knowing when we spend it.
Right. And I'm not expecting staff to sit here and say, yeah, we know the history and here's blah, 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 blah. But for me, I would like to know the history of why these things are changing and why, we're not consistent on what comes to us, what doesn't, you know what I'm saying? And I still, if it's legally possible, I want it clarified. If anything comes to me as a director, if you give me a budget and it's going to come to me as a director, just because I approve the budget does not mean I'm approving that spending if you're asking me to vote on it. Does that make sense? If you're asking me to do a budget and approve it, yes, I'm going to give $20,000 to the museum, an extra $20,000, and you still want to do a contract with them, another contract, then just because I approve the budget does not mean I'm going to agree that we should give it to them after I looked at all the facts. The budget doesn't have the facts. Your contract is going to have the facts. Do you see what I'm saying?
I understand exactly what you're saying. And all I'm saying is that if there was, like I said, I don't know the history of why that changed, and maybe nobody will know except for Mr. Patterson. Because the first few years he was here, he did not do that either. So he didn't bring it to the board because it was within
David
his.
was saying there's a time that they did bring it to the board, and Judy would know that, and so would.
Yeah, Renee, were you a part of that change? So how did that work?
Go ahead, Renee, because you know a little bit of the history.
Yeah.
Because again, I think some of the spending limit is set by the state also for contracts.
Where did such an odd number of 54,000 come from?
It comes with the CPI.
CPI increase.
But
So I just heard that Mr. Patterson did not use the CPI increase. Where did 54,000 come from?
That was where it was when he stopped using the CPI.
And he
So it
decided that
was
was
used.
it was too much. Was it 2 years ago?
The CPI was very high. It was like over almost 8% one year, and he was like, "I'm not going to use that number."
But what's the state number?
Today, I believe it is now at 50 or 60,000. The state one is
contracts?
No,
for
spending
purchasing.
limit.
For
Spending
purchasing,
limit.
yeah.
So all I'm saying is the 4,000, if it's at 50, the 4,000 was added as CPI at some point. That's why I'm saying it was an odd number.
Correct.
So you're saying it was not increased beyond a certain, like recently or whatever.
Correct.
Okay. But the last time it was changed, it was included to where, based upon the CPI, it could move up.
Yes.
I do want the budget approved because I want staff to know. I used to sit right where they sat, and I used to have to have a budget, and I used to want city council to approve that budget, but now I'm on the other side, and I understand their reservations, and I just, I want clarity. I need clarity.
Well, I will say this is the earliest I've ever seen a budget come up for a vote mid-October. It has traditionally been in November, and I've even seen it go to the first or second meeting in December. Usually the first at the outside. But my question was, is there a reason that it is coming up?
Yes, sir. Explained. I know you were not here that night 'cause you were sick. One of the big reasons we're having is trying to get projects started earlier, trying to get vehicles ordered earlier.
Okay.
We don't have to pay for them. I gave the example with Jason the other night in public services. We have we need a new garbage truck. Right now, that could take anywhere
Oh, I know.
6 months to a year. If we can if it got approved, we could actually get 3 or 4 month head start and get things done possibly in March, April instead of June and July. It
Makes
lets staff know that, hey, this project's been approved for drainage or streets or sidewalks, and we can start getting things set on go on January 1. We can get projects started. A lot of time we go late November, December. It's just really hard to get on the people's waiting list to buy equipment that we need.
Makes sense.
I can tell you why it changed. The contracts coming to you. Because in the past, everything that was within the city administrator's spending limit did not come to the board. And the night that David asked, I think his exact words, if I remember, were all contracts should be coming to the board. So even the ones that were within the administrator's spending limits, he started bringing back to the board. Is how that happened.
But it was a
Judy?
big contract we were discussing at the time.
At the time, but
Yeah.
when you said all contracts
I
should come
agree.
to the board, I think he took it.
So Judy
Literally.
so David's saying all contracts in the past used to. You were on the board for years. You did all contracts in the past?
Well, I don't
Think
think.
long ago,
well,
decades
long
ago.
ago, yeah, but then it came to a point that we didn't get them because, like she says, it was in the spending authority of the administrator. So unless it was something out of the ordinary or an extra large contract that was not within their spending limit, then yes, the board had to look at it and approve that additional over that. But, and then, like you say, and I believe you're right, Brad Burns was the one when he was here, said, well, we don't need to see all that, so.
The reason I brought it up in the first place is because it was a larger project.
Yeah.
And we had been, and I was new getting back into it, but we were getting a proposal to spend a great deal of money with just the name of the company, no names of other bidders, and no contract. So it was just, the staff says, this is what we're spending, this is who we're giving it to, vote. And so I just said, we need a little bit more information, and that's how it got overly broad. But we did get the contracts for the outside organizations the last few years because of that request. And,
Are you wanting us to keep them or to
keep what?
approving them? Or do you want them to go back to, I think that should be a discussion at the board.
Well,
'cause
I
mean,
agree,
it might-
I agree.
I have a
It was a-
question. So what's the difference between the contracts Mayor Nation signs and the contracts Mr. Gilbert signs? Like, why do you sign some and you sign others?
We vote, she has to
Because
sign.
the ones that he signs are within his spending limit. Anything that comes before the board, Judy is supposed to sign unless there is a provision in whatever resolution or ordinance that gives the city
States it.
attorney
Oh, okay.
the
It has to state it
authority
specifically.
to sign, yes.
Okay.
But within his spending authority, is there state law that says, even though it's his spending authority, that he signs the contracts rather than the mayor signs the contract? Because the state law says the mayor signs all contracts. Is a state law say, if it's within the spending authority,
I believe there is a state statute that allows him to sign things without board approval if it's within his spending limit.
well, I understand to expend the money.
No, I mean, the
Like-
contract, I think, yeah.
I'm
Jay
I'm
can
sa-
probably.
I'm saying, I agree, to expend it by coming up with a contract, but in terms of the actual signature, I thought still required the mayor.
As far as I know, the state law that gives the administrator the spending authority is silent as to who actually signs. the contract. I mean, as far as I know, it's always been interpreted that if he has the authority to spend the money, he has the authority to sign the contract. But as far as I know, the actual statute doesn't specify one way or the other.
There is a statute, though, I was just seeing if I could find it, that says the mayor's supposed to sign contracts. I know what David's talking about.
And it doesn't say only over the spending authority. It says
Right.
all contracts. But there may be some stipulation or, but I agree with Lisa that it's something certainly, we've only got 4 board members that all board members should have an input on.
Again, board, with 3 board members out, I could pull the budget and put it on the November 7th, try to get some clarity on what what the issue is, and bring it back to the board pre-agenda on the 1st. Again,
I hate being the reason that it's put off, because my heart is for the employees, because I've been there.
it's a couple weeks, but again, that just puts us behind, and board's got to understand, I'm not trying to persuade you one way or another. A lot of issues that we have as a city is we get projects started really, really late, and it's because our budget gets pushed back and back and back. We work diligently, long days and nights, trying to get the budget transparent as
And the
possible.
budget is amazing, and like I said the other night, it is amazing. It's very transparent. The questions were answered beforehand, and the public could see those answers, and I do have to say you did amazing on the transparency. And now whenever I was so thinking about the citizens and their rights, and I didn't think about me and what I think I need, because I need those lines that say, I'm a rule follower and I need a rule. And so, there's no gray area. I don't like gray areas. I'm a black and white person. It's either this or that. It's not black, gray.
I agree that they need as much time ahead of time. I was thinking of years ago, but it's a different world than it was 10 years ago, just in terms of inflation, supply chain, just the whole, we've seen it in the last couple of years, just how hard it is to get transformers. So I totally get it now that it's been explained that the lead time, the better for staff to just be able to count on that this has been approved. And no, it's not been brought specifically in, and it will be in '24, but it at least is something to realize that it's counted on and can get the ball in the works.
And my apologies, again, I'm just asking a question, because I'm going around in my brain. Would it be possible to approve the budget with the caveat that we bring this information to you on the 1st? Or, again, I don't even know if that's possible. I'm just trying to think of ways. Maybe the best thing to do is pull it until November. And like I said, it'll put us probably 5-6 weeks further out. But
I just have one question from the discussions that we had the other night. Did I understand from from Chief Miller that he needed to have the ability to order some vehicles by the 1st of November? Is that what I remember hearing?
yes, correct.
Can we have a special meeting before then? I don't mind coming into a special meeting. That's what I'm elected to do. If I have to give my time, I'll give my time. But I would like answers to things. I mean,
So, again, where I'm clear with the board is I'm going to give you clarity on the state statute, give you clarity if the money can be spent without, again, it's within our spending limit. That's where I'm a little confused.
right, and if we need to change it, do you just sign all contracts that's within your spending limit and we don't approve it? I mean, we need to have that discussion, and it needs to include all board of directors. I don't feel good about having discussions without all of us.
I agree. All the board members need to have input with this. I agree there. If you're asking me, would it be easier for me, and that's the way I would want it? Yes.
Maybe we just need to take it off the consent agenda and make it a discussion item so that when the full board is here Tuesday night, it can be, these questions can be answered.
Could you put well, is that something we'd have to vote on? Is it?
Yes.
I'm looking
just-
at Judy.
just-
Does it become a resolution because does it have to be an ordinance for you to bring contracts to us? Go ahead.
I'm new to the game here, but we're arguing a policy change versus approving the budget. Approving the budget would be completely separate from what you're talking about, which would be a policy change within the city code and what policy is set for the city administrator and his spending, not whether or not the budget is approved as a budget.
To me, they're together, because when I approve that budget, and it's gonna be thrown in my face that I approve that budget as if I'm given authority to spend. When I'm not, I have an issue. They're together for me.
Lisa, what I wrote down, you stated at the beginning of your talk here, you want clarification that this is a budget providing an outline, and it is not allocating an automatic spending of the money.
No, not if it's something that you're gonna bring to me and ask me to vote on, and then,
But-
no, if it's something that's gonna come to me, I don't want a citizen saying, well, you already said that you would spend it. No, I did not. I approved a budget. I approved an outline. There's a big difference.
So what I'm saying is, if there was a clarified policy approved by the board that was separate of this budget, approved before the budget, whatever, that as Chief Miller just said, it is a policy approval versus the nickel and dime of the budget that we are asked to approve. They don't have to be together. If we are making an approval of policy that what we believe our budget is versus the actual expenditure is this and this, and just by approving the budget is not automatically allocating money.
That's what I would.
I mean, that could be a separate,
Right, it could be go on before the budget. It could go on next week. I just want it clear.
yeah.
Just because I approved the budget, and we do need to look at, if you have a spending authority, do we need to look at every contract? And if you have the authority, why are we getting all the contracts? And
But Lisa, that policy I just described can be massaged and worked on over the next couple months before the end of the year. Approving the budget and the numbers and everything does not need an actual separate policy describing that within the budget. The budget is a guideline of numbers for staff,
and
and
that
so,
right there, that last sentence is what I want cleared.
and that's why I'm saying a separate resolution, policy, whatever you want to call it, of what you just said,
Should be voted on
can be
before
voted
the
on.
budget.
And if you want it before the budget, that's fine, but I'm just saying, it doesn't need to be within the actual budget itself. It needs
No.
to be,
It could be
as a separate
a resolution
understanding.
before it or something, but some clarity, and we need it in that, and I don't even know if it needs to be a resolution. It needs to be discussed and decided. The contracts, if we don't need contracts coming to us and you have the spending authority, then we need to look at that. Because I didn't even know why they changed. I don't know the history. I mean, we've been told there's a lot of history. And then very clear, just because we approve it, staff or anybody, nobody, citizens, anybody thinks that because I approved that budget, that I'm saying that money can be spent. If you're gonna bring it to me to vote, no, it can't be until I vote.
What we can do is leave that consent, you can pull it that night. I'll try to get you the answers tomorrow, Friday, and Monday, get them to you. The only problem is I won't be here Tuesday. I know there's one board member that's out Tuesday, but I think we can clear up your questions
Okay.
and then put it to the board as a vote, and we go from there.
And I agree with Chief Miller. I can see where he thinks it's the same, but for me, I mean, separate, but for me, it's not. And so I appreciate your input.
Regarding what you just said, Chief, I will state, it is always the prerogative of this board to change the date or time of a board meeting if we wish to do so. I'm just saying, if there's more than enough people that are not gonna make it, we can certainly change that.
That's right. So, again, we can leave it on consent and do that. I can get you some answers, or we could move it to the November 7 meeting.
No, I'm fine. I mean, as long as we're fair. We have all the directors that can be, that choose to be. If they know that discussion's gonna be on there and they aren't here, I mean, I just want to make it fair for all directors.
Well, if you don't get the answers you need Tuesday, it'll be moved to the next meeting if we can't come up with a vote that night.
I just understand that Monday night's meeting went so much quicker with me being sick and not here. So I think if I'll just shut up, we might get this one done too. I think all the staff were like, yes.
Any other questions?
Right, Christine.
All right, moving on. So the plan right now, I'm gonna leave it where it is, try to get you the answers in the next couple days, and then we'll have that discussion. Okay. Resolution to adopt compensation plan. Any questions on C? Moving on to D, budget amendment, land purchase, construction of Stubbs Street and Simon Sager Avenue, $700,000. And while you're there too, Kevin, I wanted him to kind of put D and E together to kind of explain that, because I know the way it looks like it's $1 million. But again, it's authorization. The $350,000 is a part of that $700,000, and Kevin be happy to answer all your questions. But he'll tell you a little bit about it first.
Thank you, Kevin Moore, City Engineer. So essentially, this is like Director Gilbert said, Administrator Gilbert said. The $350,000 in the next item is from the $700,000 of this item, which is a request to spend early the money that we're asking for in next year's budget. So essentially, that's what you have before you tonight. So staff is aware of a development coming in on the east side. If we could get that back up, I'm sorry. Thank you. Staff's aware of a development coming in on the east side of Simon Sager Avenue that has several really high traffic generating businesses. And so for safety, staff is proposing to purchase a portion of this property to construct a road directly across of the existing private drive on the north side of Starbucks between Freddy's and Brookhaven. And so we would essentially be extending that across to this other development to provide them a route that doesn't force all the traffic from that development onto Highway 412. So that's what both of these items are. So it's a $700,000 budget amendment for the land purchase and construction, and then the $350,000 of the next item is from that. That's half of that $700,000 that we're asking for the budget amendment. And the staff's available for any questions.
Good plan.
Questions?
I hope we're not going to have this on the consent agenda.
No, sir. No, sir. It actually is, but we can pull it. And what this is, this stub and this land purchase is very important to the development that we have coming, that we're very excited about. And again, this is a big part of it. Kevin, you can talk about a little bit where it's just something we're trying to get in, because these developers are looking to start construction in the spring, or actually as soon as probably the winter time. We're trying to possibly do this amendment this year, get the land purchased, actually get the construction. When is our goal to get that done? By April?
Yes, so essentially kind of beginning of the second quarter next year. So ideally we'll be able to get that at least started, kind of break ground at the end of this year, and then have that in for the developer to match when they come through to the east.
And again, that's something you guys can pull from consent. We can have discussion that night. We'll be prepared to answer any questions. But again, if you have questions now, please. And I'm sure there's board members not here. They may have questions.
So do you want me to move this off of consent and put it under contracts and approvals? No?
So it's the board's pleasure. It's just, again, you can still pull it from consent to discuss it.
We have to pull it from consent because looking at this land, David can't vote on it.
Right.
So does it?
That's, well, he can. He chooses.
Oh,
I can't vote for the consent agenda if that's on it.
Okay, then put it contracts and approvals.
because that's his brother's land.
Mm.
I think he's excused himself in the past. I don't know the history of it.
Just for ethical values.
I just remember a lot of that stuff comes to it. He usually excuses himself.
Oh, state law, I have to abstain, so I don't want to have to request that it come off, because if it's on the consent agenda, I can't vote on the consent agenda. So it's just better to go ahead and take it off now.
So I'll request it to be.
Well noted. Did you talk about E? Is there any questions about E? Okay, anything else there?
Consent agenda is really supposed to be stuff that we're pretty sure is just going to be voted through, and oftentimes is housekeeping and minutes and things like that. So two important things like that we know are gonna have to be taken off anyway, they just shouldn't even be put on the consent agenda in the first place.
Okay. F, contracts and approval, lease agreements, Simmons Food Incorporated, dark fiber.
Bill Stokes, Electric Director. Simmons is needing fiber to their 28 Springs location, and this would allow them to complete their path for their fiber, and it also gives us the ability to use most of the fiber that's being pulled for a downtown application. So it's just dark fiber that they're needing. They light it up, and we're just providing a path for them. The contract says it's for 3 years, and we'll recoup all of our cost in that 3-year period. We have a similar agreement with Cobb, same type of agreement that we have with Cobb as we are proposing with Simmons.
Questions for Phil? Phil, if you, while you're there, you want to go ahead and discuss?
Yes.
Had an issue come up, and I want him to kind of let you guys know what's going on.
Yeah, back in 1939, the city of Siloam Springs and Carroll Electric signed an agreement establishing a service territory that gave us guidelines on where we could serve electric customers. Well, over those years, since 1939, why Carroll has served 215 of our customers inside this boundary that we were supposed to be serving. We serve about 40 of their customers outside of this boundary. The 40 that we serve, most of those is because Carroll didn't have lines in the area to serve these customers, and we agreed to serve these customers. But inside our service territory, these 215 customers includes 3 subdivisions, which is Oakcrest, Edgewood, and Meadowwood. And so if we don't continue to monitor what's going on, they have tried to cherry pick customers even in the last few years, and we've had to say, hey, that's not your territory to serve. And so the kicker is, if we annex land, or if we want to take these customers even in our service territory, Carroll is insisting that we pay 3.5 times what the annual revenue is to get these customers back. And our argument is we shouldn't have to pay for our own customers. We hired a lawyer to look at this, and he is, we're told this week, is going to file a complaint with the Corporation Commission complaining about this situation. We just wanted you to be aware of what was going on. If it goes to the newspapers, you weren't being caught off guard.
So Phil, how did those 3 neighborhoods get on Carroll? Was it before we annexed and they got built?
No.
Come on, man, you don't know all this stuff? They sound like some old neighborhoods too. Like,
yeah, they've been since the early 80s and 70s.
yeah,
They were built, and so I don't know all the history.
may not have even been in the city limits at the time.
Yeah, they were.
Oh, they were, but they still.
Well, they were in our service territory.
Oh, okay. And then later got annexed, and so they were still
Well,
Carroll.
no, they never were.
They
these
never
weren't-
should have been Carroll? Okay.
No, service not to begin with. That's when we went back, looked at, had the Corporation Commission send us what their boundaries are, and so we put them on the map, and they haven't changed. The only thing changed is what we've annexed to the north a little bit. So, and Carroll says, well, in the emails we get from Carroll, we've met with them several times. They say, well, these boundaries were never established. There's always been open to discussion. And so our argument is, yes, they were established, and why aren't you abiding by them?
Always and never, those are two words that are easily thrown around.
Yes.
Thank you for pursuing that.
Yeah, yeah. Thanks
So
for,
again, vacation. So,
that's quite a lot to expect 3 times annual revenue.
so hopefully as soon as we hear something, we'll keep you updated. All right, ordinances.
And I understand from having talked to customers that are outside the city limits who like being on Carroll, but the city of Siloam Springs has been by far for decades the most reliable electric for getting electric back on quick, even in severely harsh weather. Our people are out repairing. And so Carroll has not got the reliability factor the city of Siloam does, so.
All right, move into ordinances. Letter G, ordinance 23-23, second reading, amending city municipal code, chapter 102 zoning, G1 zone. Any questions there? Staff will be happy to ask. All right, ordinance H, ordinance 24-23, first reading only, waive competitive bidding, health insurance network, administration, Blue Cross Blue Shield. Staff will be happy to answer any questions there.
Thank you for all the hard work into that, because I know what it's like.
Is there any update on that, Misty? Are we good?
Misty, would you come to the mic since we're recording this?
I was just going to say, employees just love Arkansas Blue Cross Blue Shield, so thank you for voting for that, because it's nice. It keeps complaints out of my office, so thank you.
Again, I, resolution 6223, contract Sager Creek improvement, Freeze and Nichols. Kevin and Chris are here for questions. We're kind of explain the process and where we're at right now.
Thank you. Kevin Moore, city engineer. So about a month ago, we brought an initial contract before you as a board, and the discussion at that pre-agenda meeting was essentially to remove all the unnecessary items and focus only on the structural improvements. So this revised contract is for the dam, the overhang, and the retaining wall. And so that's what's before you here tonight. So that has been revised from $510,000 down to $332,685, and $500,000 was budgeted for this year for this project. And staff's available for any questions.
Kevin, if you would, kind of explain where we're at, where that we have shortened the scope, because I was actually thinking about pulling this and talk to see if anyone else would want to come in. It's not actually a bid process, and kind of explain that to the board where we're at and why we're not doing that.
Absolutely. So towards the beginning of the year, I believe around February, we put out requests for qualifications for this project. Due to its size, we did that specifically instead of our yearly request for engineering services. So it was a specific request for this project, and we received 2 responses, one from Alliance Technical Group and then one from Freese and Nichols. And staff put a committee together internally to rank those. We have rankings that we go by, and we publish what we're looking for along with the request for qualifications. And then overwhelmingly, Freese and Nichols was selected for this project.
Have you went back to that other company and told them the changes? Because we voted, or we didn't vote, we discussed changing the scope. So have you went back to them and said, hey, the scope's changed, so do you want, is your process, is it the same, the qualifications?
So it's pretty regular for the scope to be adjusted during contract negotiations, and I don't believe it's changed enough that we would want to select a different firm than what we have now. Alliance Technical Group didn't really include a lot of the structural stuff that we're needing, almost to the point where if we had done only aesthetic stuff, they may have been the better choice. But for this structural stuff, it was clearly Freese and Nichols.
Madam Mayor?
Yes, David.
Kevin, respectfully, I disagree that when you drop your contract from 500 to 330, you're dropping it. $170,000 is an awful lot. Number one, I absolutely wholeheartedly disagree with the use of statements of qualifications. It does not give you the proposal or anything. I don't know why we ever went with that requirement instead of actually getting a proposal from an organization of what they can do. Just saying that they're qualified to do it doesn't really matter a lot. When you reduce the bid specs or reduce the scope of the project, you very well could have eliminated companies by the size of it earlier, and by reducing it, you could have some companies say, oh, well, if I'd only known, I would have been on it. You know, I wasn't able to do it because, well, it included the Riverwalk and all these other things. On top of that, just the fact that we only had 2 companies and that it was all geared to go to this Freese and Nichols from the beginning, it just does not sit well with me. Unanimously selected earlier this year, and because they had a relationship with the city already, we decided they were the favorite. They ripped us off with the comprehensive plan. I don't believe that they did us right with that, with what they charged, and I don't think they did the work. And what's surprising is that before you had the approval to hire or choose any company, you guys went ahead and met with this company, it says several times over the course of the year, to establish and refine the scope of the project. That makes them believe they've got the project. That makes them believe the contract is done and signed and everything's on the move. That's the cart before the horse, and
if I may,
I don't think it's right.
If I may, so our policy for contract negotiations with qualifications are to rank them and then bring those before the city administrator, and then their agreement would allow us to enter into negotiations with the contract that we selected. If negotiations fall through, then you move down to the second and then the third and down the line until you reach a contract that everybody is happy with. So staff can absolutely undertake the negotiation portion of this and then bring that contract to the board. I also want to speak to, so I can't say that if we were to put out qualifications again, we wouldn't get additional companies, because we may, but the change to the scope is a fairly regular thing that occurs with major design contracts. It's stated in Arkansas state statute that for professional services, we have to go through the qualification process. We can't just use the RFP process. And so while we could certainly get another company that focuses maybe only on the structural portion, kind of to your point, we could just as easily get different companies if we bid it in March than if we bid it in, or so to try and narrow down all the different what ifs, I don't believe is valid.
The fact is, this is not a rush project. It needs to be done right. This is taxpayer money, and what we were presented in September was with the assumption that the city would end up spending between $4 and $5 million to fix Sager Creek, that this was just the engineering. So to ask the city to be committing to such a huge expenditure of money down the line, we better be really prepared with what we're doing on the front end here. I've looked this company up, I've researched, and they have so many divisions across the country on doing so many different things. Not a single one of them had anything to do with comprehensive plan. I don't know how they got that proposal in the first place. But tell people what you want to hear, and they often can get a contract. I just do not appreciate what they did for the city. I watched them with the comprehensive plan. I don't think they did much work. I can't trust this company, and I don't want to simply hand this contract, as it seems like we're doing, because of former leadership at the first of the year knew them and liked them. So I will not support Freese and Nichols until and unless we go back and open this up for new bids.
Have we had any federal agencies or some creek companies look at this and see? I mean, sometimes like federal agencies, I know for a fact, come in and they help cities and they help counties and stuff, especially with environmental, and this is an environmental. And I'm just curious, have we had any agencies look at this?
I'm not certain that we have. Right. I'm not certain that we have. I know we've had several studies done, and whether the different agencies that may have been involved in those past studies, I'm not entirely certain.
I'm just curious, because sometimes the federal government has a resource that actually might help even pay for it. And I was asked that because my husband worked for the Department of Agriculture for 25 years. He retired from the Department of Agriculture, and one of the things he did was studies on these. And so that was a question he asked me, and I said, well, I don't know. I'll have to ask the question. And so we don't even know if we've looked into the possibility of the federal government helping with this.
We saw in September there had been, back several years, 4 or 5 studies or
and
things
who were
we
they?
paid.
That's what I didn't know who they were.
No, me neither.
Right.
But they were not the federal government. They were actually companies that came in and did research.
And that may certainly be something that our grant coordinator could look into for the construction itself. But I'm not aware of anything like that on the design and construction drawing side. I think it would kick in more when we're actually doing the revitalization.
Okay.
Hey, Kevin, where we're at, I know it's in this year's budget, and again, how long do you think a new scope would take, or we would set this back 6 months, a year? 'Cause
at least 6 months. So we have to publish for 30 days, which we did back in February. And then we've been negotiating with Freese and Nichols for the last 5-6 months at this point. So it's been a lot of work on their end to get to this point as well. And we provided them with the previous studies that had been done to try and bring that scope of work down and that cost down for their contract as well, just so they could build off of things that had already been looked at.
How much have we paid them so far on this?
We've not paid them anything yet. So that was all setting the scope and the contract and now bringing it before you as a board.
But that's my argument, is that moving forward without board input, without even having brought it to the board and said, here's the plan, here's the proposal, this, I know it's been budgeted, but we haven't explained it to you, which really hadn't happened until September when we had it on our agenda to actually vote for it. I think it's not fair to the citizens, much less the company that you're working with, to have all this work between them and staff as if they're definitely getting the contract.
Well, and for a project this large, just to go back a little bit, and I wish Travis was still here, but back in 2021, this board formed a Sager Creek Advisory Committee. So this has been several years in the making, not just since February. And so the contract that we presented originally from Freese and Nichols was meeting that the board had seen as the results of that committee.
Any other questions?
I totally get that. I was here when we appointed it, and Brad Burns was our representative from the board. But we never actually had this proposal of what was decided until September. You realize that?
I can't speak to that.
Yeah. So when
I believe those results were presented to you, but the first time you saw the contract was after it had been negotiated. That's correct, and that's by our requirements.
Anything else, board? All right, moving. Again, we have run late over, and I appreciate everybody's input. We'll take everything into consideration, make the adjustments and changes. I know several of us have to go to the high school and do some cooking tonight, so I don't want to get on too late. I won't say anything, but someone volunteer me, so that's where I'll be. But again, I appreciate the board, and we will get you the information you need. Any other questions?
Just out of curiosity, that contract for the dark fiber with Simmons, is that not something that could go on consent agenda? Or is, because it's a contract, it has to go?
It's actually a contract.
I had thought I'd seen other ones for dark fiber up in the consent, is why I asked, so, okay.
Renee, I'll defer to you. Is that something, because what I've seen so far, that's usually where that contract goes. Is that something that we've done in the past?
To my knowledge, we've always put the dark fiber items under contracts. The last one I can remember doing was the one for Cobb downtown.
Thank you for that clarity. Okay.
Bill's shaking his head, yes.
Turn it back over to you, Mayor.
Betsy, you
So-
have, yes.
Sorry.
Yeah, thank you. So we're not gonna do streets today?
We don't have time. It's a pretty thorough
Yeah.
process, and I know you're going to have questions. I think it'd probably take them about 20 minutes just to do the discussion and questions. And with this many board members missing, it's pretty, I'd like to get everyone's input as we move forward in the next year. Again, we have things on the agenda such as goals I want to talk about. Sanitation and public services has a workshop, just the state of public services, to let you know where we were, where we are, and where we're going. We have several other updates that we want to do over the next few months. Right now on schedule, we are not scheduled to meet any meetings at all, unless you guys just want to meet. But we won't have a meeting again until November 1st, and then we'll have pre-agenda on November 1st, and then we will have our board meeting on the 7th. I think that's correct. We actually have the way the schedule falls, we have 3 board meetings, three pre-agenda meetings in the month of November, 2 board meetings. Since we got a little bit of time, I would like to just discuss a little bit the way the calendar falls. Again, I don't know how we've done this in the past, and excuse me as I look at my calendar, but in January, I can make it a very short meeting and not put a lot on there, but fast forwarding to January, the way that board meeting falls, it falls on the 2nd of January. The week before that, we're off 2 days for Christmas holidays. So it only gives us, and then that Wednesday would be a pre-agenda. So it doesn't give you a lot of time. It doesn't give us a lot of time to get the work in that we need. So I don't know if we can move the meeting by ordinance, or how we can do that, or I can just make it. I don't want to waste your. I know there's a lot of.
You've got 5 Tuesdays in that month.
Yeah, and
so
we
where
could
you
move
could
that.
put it to the 9th if you wanted.
Yes, sir. I just didn't know if we were allowed to do that. That's something we've done in the past, so that's what I'm kind of asking. Anything on that?
No, it's been done in the past. We've moved meeting days.
Okay.
Yeah, I was gonna say, we've moved.
Board can change its time, date, whatever, as long as the board approves it.
Great.
But you could have your first meeting on the 9th and your second one on the 23rd.
So again, and I know we don't vote in these type of meetings, but if that's something that we can do, go ahead, Renee.
When's planning and
This
zoning
second
meeting?
Tuesday,
I was
so
gonna say, the
it would
second
need to
Tuesday is
be,
planning, so
yeah, it would
that's
need to be
not gonna
something
work.
other than that day.
Yeah. So what I'll do, as long as I know I can move it, I will work on that schedule, and I'll let the board know. I know it's going to be very awkward the way this date falls this year, with a city holiday on that Monday, 2 city holidays the week before.
What time does planning start, Kevin?
4:30
5:30.
or 5:30. I'm sorry.
Oh, I thought it used to be 4:30. Maybe it used to be. Okay. And is it always go beyond an hour?
Pretty rarely. It's usually just under an hour. So,
That's
but we don't know what all will fall on the agenda until the beginning of December. We would know that.
So as
And
we
you
get
gotta
close,
remember, there's no meeting in December for planning.
There will be this year.
Oh, there will?
There will be.
yes, they changed it. They told me yesterday. I haven't told you. That's going to be the 9th.
As you said, if we have it on the 2nd, your pre-agenda is on the 27th, right?
Right. It's just
That's a real weird.
and again, staff is off that Friday, Saturday, Or, I'm
Right.
sorry, that Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, and it just doesn't give us a lot to prepare. And I hate for you to come in during the holidays just for a couple things on the agenda. If we're gonna meet, let's get a lot of work done when we can and move on. So I will get you a schedule. Let me look at the calendar. I just wanted to make sure that the board members were good with that, where we can be productive. And I will work, and that may be something we can move the 9th meeting. Maybe they can meet at 4 o'clock.
Or even
at
at 5 instead of 5:30.
I'm sorry, yes, I meant a
yeah.
half an hour early, but
Yeah.
they could start at 5. That way we can still have our scheduled meeting at 6:30. And maybe we can do that. But let me look into it, and I will let you know something the next couple of weeks and get you a calendar out. You don't want to do anything to waste your time. Okay. Any other questions, comments? All right, appreciate your time, Mayor.
You are complete. You are finished, is that right? No other questions, directors? Staff, any comments that you all would like to make? If not, we will call this meeting adjourned.